All right, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of the Balance Breakdown. And today we are a three-piece minus our soda. Lee is off auditioning for the new Batman film, so we wish him the best of luck with that. But I am joined by the lesser researched of the two Combat Thoughts mentors, and that is Mr. Robbie. How's it going, sir?
It's going all right. Still got my home, so that's all right.
It's all right, good, excellent. And we are joined by the hardest working man in Saskatoon, Mr. Ian O'Neill.
How's it going, guys?
All right, mate. Yeah, all right. Right, so we'll jump straight in. Bit of news. Jake Hadley. Where do we even start with Jake Hadley, right? I think let's just set the scene a little bit, right? So Jake Hadley is a flyweight fighter fighting out of the UK, went over to ESC, won a title, came to Cage Warriors, looked like an absolute phenom, won a title there. And usually when you win a title in Cage Warriors, that's your first class ticket to the UFC, right? Jake Hadley was pushed through the Dana White Contender Series. It was a very tumultuous journey for him. He had a fight, got pulled, got offered a fight on very short notice, didn't make weight, then went in, absolutely battered your man from pillar to post, won with a rear naked choke in the second round, sat on the stool, crying his eyes out, thought he'd missed his opportunity. Dana White gives him the shot. Your man breaks down. And then the day after, posts on Instagram a video of him on his 9th birthday. And his mum asked him to blow out the candles on his cake, make a wish. He did that. And his mum said, what was his wish? And his wish was to be a UFC fighter. If that's not the most fucking wholesome thing you've ever heard in your life, I don't know what is.
It was great. It was great to see. I mean, normally when it comes to weight cuts and guys missing weight, I might be a little bit, would be a little bit more kind of harsh in what I would think on something like that. But the circumstances that Jake Hadley had to deal with ahead of that fight, with fights getting changed, going over last minute, he said, it would have been probably his first time traveling over stateside as well, dealing with that. And he said that he had eaten something or drank something that seemingly he thought had held on water weight. And also another thing about his weight cut too is that he was given an hour to cut the weight, but he was only really given 20 minutes to actually physically cut weight during that hour. So there was a bit of a mix up there. But all comes to all, I do think that the pressure was on him to go in there and get a finish in that fight. Mm-hmm. And I believe the fact that he went in there and got the finish more so than anything else got him rewarded with that contract. I mean, the guy he beat was a number one pick on the last Ultimate Fighter. So the guy who you went in there went against really was no joke either.
Really good fight.
So I'm so happy to see him. UFC need more flyweights, especially guys like Jake Hadley. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal fighter, and it's going to be a fantastic journey inside the UFC with him.
I feel like you're looking at top 15 fighter immediately with Jake Hadley. He can grapple. His striking's fantastic. He's big for the weight class, strong for the weight class, got a good chin. And that motherfucker is dominant when he gets to his own wheelhouse. So I am ultra excited for Jake Hadley. And in an MMA sphere where the last few weeks has been absolute dog shit news after dog shit news after dog shit news, it was so nice to see something as pure and as wholesome that really reminds you, why MMA is so beautiful in a lot of ways, So yeah, that's our good news story. Let's get into some fights. So main card, UFC 267. It seems like this should have been held in Moscow, but here we are. We start the card off with Jan Błachowicz versus Glover Teixeira. Personally, I will just say it's about fucking time Glover got a shot. You know what I mean? It's about fucking time. But Ian, do you want to take us away with some quick thoughts you've got? Your man's 32-7, How's he never fought for a fucking title?
He has fought for a title, though, against John Jones.
Oh, he did, yeah. But that's not really fighting for a title when you fight John Jones. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, fight to survive.
How many years?
Yeah.
Like I remember Glover Teixeira and talks about Glover Teixeira back in the day before. he had joined into the UFC, and there was a huge delay on him even coming into the UFC over visa issues at the time.
Yeah.
He was a main training partner of Chuck Liddell back in the day, and there was these stories coming out of Brazil that this guy was absolutely bludgeoning guys over in Brazil, and that he joined UFC, I believe, at a record of 20-1 at the time or something like that.
He was 16-2.
16-2 close. But in around that anyway. So like, I was really excited to see him, and he went in with a good head of steam, and he's like, I'm so glad that he got this second opportunity, because he went in there against one of the greatest fighters of all time. Didn't happen for him. He could have easily just packed his bags and just settled for a couple of easy fights, but no, he got back on the horse. He got back to work, racked up a couple of wins again, and he finds himself in another title shot. And I'm the same opinion as Harry. I'm delighted to see him in another title shot, and I cannot wait to see this fight. Jan Błachowicz, I've doubted that man time and time again. I don't want to doubt him anymore.
But you do.
This is going to be. I'm steering away from trying to give my predictions early this time. So yeah. I mean, with Jan, I mean he's proved himself now to mixed martial arts fans that any doubts that Jan Błachowicz would have been always considered a good fighter, a really good fighter. I think we're getting to the stage where now we're with another couple of title defenses that we could be starting to call Jan a really great fighter. And a really elite fighter as well. There's a step that you take when you maybe hit the top 5 or the top 3 of the UFC, where you get to elite level status. And you're talking about a Jan Błachowicz who went out there before and he outstruck Israel Adesanya, who would have been a astounding striker, and no one has ever came close to outstriking him in the UFC so far. So, I mean, it was massively impressive performance, and he'll have a bunch of confidence coming into this fight. And he's going to, this is just a game and a fight between two wily veterans, and anything could happen in this fight. And I mean, I'm fucking buzzing for this fight, guys. I really am.
I agree. And just to touch on Glover a little bit, he's only lost. The only guy that you really like raise an eyelid, I guess, at him losing is Phil Davis, right? But Phil Davis, again, is a wily veteran, knows how to win fights, right? But he lost to John Jones, unanimous decision. These things happen. Got absolutely slammed by Anthony Johnson, one of the worst KOs I've ever seen.
That was.
Right?
I had the pleasure of watching that live in the T-Mobile Arena, and my goodness, it was as shocking live as it was on the TV after. I mean, to see a guy as big and as burly as Glover Teixeira going down after that shot from Rumble Johnson, and I mean, even to come back from that knockout, guys, a man of his age, even like, I talked about coming back after John Jones, come back again after that knockout. I mean, his heart cannot be questioned coming into 100%. This fight, or his desire to be a champion as well.
100%.
You need that.
And I went out, I was lucky enough to watch Alexander Gustafsson knock him out in Sweden. And that was absolutely brutal as well, right? He comes back again, loses to Cory Anderson, and since then has put an absolutely lovely run together, right? A lovely run together. And I'm not gonna give my prediction now, but I'll just give some of the technical things that I can see in the fight. Teixeira is vastly underrated in a lot of realms, right? Got fantastic hands, we know about that, but a very underrated grappling game. Very underrated grappling game, right? However, he doesn't do a lot of kicking, not to the volume that Jan does, and not at the angles that Jan does. And I feel as though, to me, the kicks of Jan are going to play an absolutely massive part of this. It's either going to mean that Jan ends up on his back or driven against the fence, because Teixeira is going to catch kicks and run him, or it's going to create distance and it's going to stop Teixeira landing hands. And I'm going to be really, really interested to see how that plays out. Because I thought Jan used kicks against Adesanya so well. Kicked at the perfect times, kicked off rhythm, kicked off angle. And it just confused Adesanya, right? It didn't allow Adesanya to set the pace, set the rhythm. You don't want to let Glover Teixeira set the rhythm and set the pace, because he will smash your head in, right? So I feel as though this is a fight for Jan to lose. But Robbie, do you disagree?
See, now you throw me into doubt, because when you said that Glover Teixeira is underrated in a lot of areas, all that kept going through my head when you said about the kicking, I was like, Glover's not well known as a guy to, he's not well known as a big wrestler on that front. Am I wrong? Do you think that that's going to be a real threat? Do you think that's something that would be so threatening that Jan would consider not throwing them? Because a lot of people won't throw leg or body kicks against wrestlers for that worry about someone grabbing the leg.
So my thought is, everyone doesn't think Glover's a grappler. But watch what happens if he does catch a couple of kicks and does run Jan to the cage. What happens then? If we see a round one where Jan throws 5 kicks and one gets him taken down, what happens?
I don't think we see too many kicks for the rest of the fight.
Exactly my point, right? And then you're contesting Glover in his wheelhouse, striking range, like boxing range, right? That is where the fight gets very interesting for me.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Jan can grapple, right? Black belt in jiu-jitsu, hit a beautifully timed double leg against Izzy, held him down really well. Okay, size difference, etc., etc. But he's clearly got it in his wheelhouse.
I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see about both fighters, because Glover Teixeira in recent times has kind of bullied his opponents. Like when you look at Thiago Santos and look at Anthony Smith. Now, I don't think he's going to be able to bully Jan Błachowicz as much as he was able to bully those two guys coming up from the middleweight division. But I think if Glover chooses to solely stand and bang with Big Jan here, I think that's going to be a bad move. He's going to have to be looking to try and close the distance with his strikes and taking this fight down to the mat, or putting Jan up against the fence and grinding against him and just making it tough and hard and try and tire him out and grind him out. I think that Jan Błachowicz will have a massive advantage on the feet, to be honest. And I think he's going to be, I think he will have a massive advantage. I mean, when it comes to Glover Teixeira, his boxing is fantastic, but it doesn't, like Harry said, doesn't throw any kicks. He doesn't throw any knees. I mean, he's not as dynamic as a striker as Jan Błachowicz. We're talking about the same Jan Błachowicz who went in there and talked, quote unquote, he beat one of the best strikers inside the UFC or inside MMA right now. Sure. And I mean, it really opened my eyes to the level of striking that Jan has and the level of training partners that he works with as well. Like I talked to Severe MMA's Sean Denny, who is like massively involved in the. Yeah, he's currently over at. We're recording this right now, but he'll be at the KSW card this weekend. But he was telling me before that Israel Adesanya fight that Jan was working with some phenomenal strikers. Polish strikers that we wouldn't be aware of, and anybody that he does work with, he's gone back to his old camp in Poland, and they're getting in the creme de la creme of guys to work with Big Jan. And I think that we've seen the results of that work against Israel Adesanya, which was just one of Jan's best performances in his career so far. So that was going to give him a bunch of confidence. But what he has in front of him in this main event is a guy who's seen and done it all, and who's a wily veteran, and a guy has ultimately his last chance of winning UFC gold. So he's going to be going out there to do everything that he can to try and get this result. And that in its own right makes this a fascinating fight.
Jesus, that's a fucking absolute media hype job. I'm ready for it now. Just give it to me now. Fuck it. Let's see it.
I can't wait, man. I mean, I'm not bullshitting when I say I can't wait. I mean, I'm buzzing about this fight.
Yeah.
He is doing tremendously well for a man of his age. Glover doesn't seem to have slowed down. I mean, I've not really noticed him really struggling like a lot of people would, but at 41 and I know it's light heavyweight, but normally it's only the heavyweights who really get to that kind of age without showing any signs. 41, he's doing very well for himself.
Yeah, he is. I don't know if I agree, actually, with the massive advantage on the feet. The reason why I say that is because if it stays standing without any grappling exchanges, I would agree. But you have to think that Glover knows that without mixing in something, he's going to have problems on the feet. Do you know what I mean? So I feel as though, and this will round me out into my pick, right? But I feel as though if Glover mixes in wrestling early, that will nullify some of the movements of Jan. And Jan isn't a beautiful striker in the traditional sense, but he's fantastic at catching people off rhythm, right? Glover can use the grappling to beat the off-rhythm fighter, right? He can off-rhythm the off-rhythm fighter. And I feel as though that can play into his wheelhouse. Now, my pick is Jan Błachowicz, late stoppage. I feel as though Jan is as wily as they come, right? Your man's had, 36 fights, right? No fucking joke. Okay, Glover's had however many fights he's had. What is it, 39? But as Ian alluded to earlier, right? Both of these lads know what they're going to bring, right? And I feel as though Jan has actually gotten way better in the last 3 to 5 years than Glover has excelled, right? So I feel as though Big Jan will have too much. And I think we're going to see a very tough Glover Teixeira give his absolute all. But I do think that Jan finishes him late. Ian, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I agree with you on your pick where I'm going to be picking Jan Błachowicz as well. I would probably pick him to win by a decision. It's hard to know. I think that he's going to have to deal with some level of grappling, but I think that Big Jan is probably going to be able to fend off the majority of the attacks and probably have his way on the feet with Glover Teixeira, and he'll probably go on to win a decision. I'm looking at the level of competition that both fighters have fought over the past couple of years, and you'd have to say that Big Jan has been fighting a higher level of competition than what Glover Teixeira has fought. But, that's nobody's fault. But it does stand to you when you do come up against the elite level fighters, when you are fighting elite level fighters. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Look, I'm picking Big Jan, but this is a fight. If I didn't get right and Glover Teixeira didn't, I wouldn't be too disappointed. I'd be very glad to see him get done. He's just an absolute legend of the game, and he does deserve this shot. And hopefully for him, he gets it done, but I can't see it.
For sure. And just one thing I will add, just before I pass over to Robbie, my only thought, if there's a flaw in Jan Błachowicz, is he seems to fight to his level of opposition, right? Like, he lost to fucking Jimmy Manuwa. You know what I mean? Jimmy Manuwa was not an elite fighter. A great European fighter, but not an elite fighter, right? So I just hope that he fights to the level he's at now, rather than anyway. Robbie, what's your pick?
He was able to get that win back though, in the same with Cory Anderson. And I think down, like I said before, is that I think the big change in his career has been that switch over back. Moving over to his home gym back in Polish MMA, where I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. I'm useless with gyms.
I can find out. Hold on. It's called WCA Fight Team.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's all down to the hangman's rope. That's why he's winning now.
Yes, that's probably obviously it. Yeah. So all right, somebody's watching the UFC embedded. Jesus. So what's your pick, Robbie?
I'm gonna have to go with Polish Power for this one.
Yeah.
I don't want this to become one of those episodes where I just follow along with everyone's pick, but it's really hard to go against Jan in this fight, isn't it? I think I would even give him more of an advantage maybe than you guys are. I think even Jan's striking is weirdly underrated. And you saw that in the Izzy fight, in that everyone there was like, Izzy's doing so well. I'm like, and then now afterwards, everyone kind of realized that, is he doing that well? That was that very weird thing about that fight. Jan's striking, like you said earlier, is not that pretty, but actually he uses all the same weapons as Izzy, in a strange way, and gets the job done. I think his striking's brilliant. I think he's gonna beat Glover on the feet.
He beat Izzy at his own game, which was unbelievable in my opinion.
He uses the same weapons as Izzy. That's the strange thing. But his striking style looks so different. But Izzy just comes across like he's winning all the time because he looks pretty.
Izzy does look pretty, but the massive difference is Izzy fakes more than any fighter in MMA. No, and I mean legitimate faking, right? I don't mean fucking Cynthia Calvillo throwing jabs out to nothing, right? I mean, he legitimately makes reads and fakes.
No, you're
Jan
right. Like,
fakes, but he throws more, you know?
Yeah. And Jan did very well in that
not
Israel
biting.
Adesanya not biting on those feints. Like, I
Yes.
mean, that's what, like, we've seen Israel Adesanya in the past literally put Paulo Costa at a standstill in the octagon with his feints, like where he was like a rabbit in headlights and didn't know what to do. And you have to give credit to Jan Błachowicz because he didn't bite into those at all. And he actually, let alone did he not bite into them, he actually manifested perfect combinations to counter those feints as well, which is unbelievable in my eyes.
Absolutely. Anyway, let's move on to Petr Yan versus Cory Sandhagen. I might have some controversial opinions here, but I'm going to throw it over to Robbie to start. What do you think about this fight?
I think this is a bizarre fight where two guys who probably won their last fight got given a loss, in their own weird ways. And now they're having to battle it out. I think this is obviously one of their paths to a title shot. And I've loved Cory. Like, Cory Sandhagen's one of the guys I've actually paid attention to for quite a while. It may surprise you to hear, but considering my casual approach to the UFC, but he's actually someone I've paid attention to for a while, and his striking's awesome. I love it. I haven't really considered exactly how they're going to match up, but I think it's going to be a brilliant fight on the feet. I think Cory Sandhagen may have the advantage in the striking realm. Oh, is that controversial there? I'm excited for this one.
Ian, go on. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, I think that Petr Yan is probably a better striker right now than Cory Sandhagen. And I think he would be quite a bit better. Now, I think the story of this fight boils down to Cory Sandhagen and what he has done to correct the mistakes that he made against TJ Dillashaw. Now, I think that fight for Cory Sandhagen maybe 3-2, right? But I thought that Sandhagen, his fight IQ and his experience in big fights maybe lacked a little bit in decision making, when to attack, when not to attack. I think that he allowed himself to be caught up in the clinch of TJ Dillashaw a little bit too much. He allowed Dillashaw onto his back too much in that fight. Standing up and against the cage, I thought he wasn't active enough. I thought when he was moving forward, throwing strikes, I thought Cory Sandhagen was wide open for shots and ate way more shots than he should have against TJ Dillashaw. And I mean, against a striker like Yan, you can't fucking do that. I mean, TJ Dillashaw was coming back off after a 2-year layoff, and he's off the juice now, and he was able to, supposedly. So he had his way on the feet. So Petr Yan is going to do the exact same to Cory Sandhagen if Sandhagen doesn't correct those mistakes. How do you correct those mistakes? Well, you just don't move forward as much as he had been moving forward, and you don't leave yourself open. You need to fight a little bit more patiently. You need to, if you're Cory Sandhagen, not accept positions, because Petr Yan is going to look to scramble like he does in the clinch, and he's going to look to separate and land elbows or big shots. That's what Petr Yan does so fucking well, is that he's excellent off the clinch. And when you're looking at Cory Sandhagen, he didn't do all that well in the clinch against TJ Dillashaw, so he'll have to improve massively coming into this fight on that. So that's basically my opinion. I think that it's an exciting fight. I can't wait to see it. I'm a huge Petr Yan fan. I'm very high up on him. I think he's a phenomenal fighter, a very dynamic striker, surprisingly powerful as well for the size of him. You know, he's going to be at a size disadvantage in this fight, but his power is next to none. He has the ability, if he lands correctly and if he lands sweet, to stop anyone or hurt anybody really badly, and he can get those guys out of there too when he does hurt them. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts. I think it's going to be a fascinating contest. I think it's probably going to play out mainly on the feet. I think that Yan is probably going to utilize clinch work and a small bit of grappling, but just so to open up his strikes in the clinching range and to get himself inside.
So it turns out my thoughts aren't that controversial. I'm not sure it's that fascinating. I'm a big Cory Sandhagen fan. I'm also a big Petr Yan fan. I don't see how Cory Sandhagen wins this fight. So, Petr Yan has a couple of tools that I think are nightmares for Cory Sandhagen. The first is the stance switching. Who else switches stance as they throw strikes? TJ fucking Dillashaw, right? Yan hits really hard, as you've already said, mixes in his grappling. His trips from the clinch are fantastic. His opportunistic shots are beautiful. His fight IQ is beautiful. And he has that very specific Russian style of boxing where he gives you nothing. His hands are literally on his forehead and he's switching stance. He's cutting angles. He's moving in. He rips to the body beautifully. He checks kicks well. And if you're Cory Sandhagen, who's a big kicker, right? Lots of kicks, lots of length, lots of range. How are you going to get those kicks off? From the clinch, right? However, there's two things here. The first thing is Cory Sandhagen is an absolute sniper. If he's one thing, he's a sniper. You give him a chance at that flying knee and you are going to sleep, right? You give him a chance at some shot that he's seen and he can land, you're going to sleep. But to me, the more technical striker or the more technical MMA fighter is, I say this all the fucking time, is the person that I will pick. Nobody does to Jose Aldo what Petr Yan did. Nobody beats the brakes off that man, pushes him backwards, takes him down, and leaves him in a pool of his own blood. Nobody does that. I feel as though this is a very, very tough matchup for Cory Sandhagen. Petr Yan's footwork is amazing. I think his grappling is underrated. However, as Ian's already alluded to, I'm basically just parroting that shit, right? Like he uses his off balances, his foot sweeps are basically to make you overreach so he can land shots. Amazing. Beautiful. If you fall over, grand. He'll just follow you down. No problems. If you don't, fine. I'll just hit you anyway, right? I just feel as though it's a really tough night for Cory Sandhagen. Now, can Cory Sandhagen win? Of course he can. Absolutely. But he needs to change the way he fights almost completely, I think. And that for a fighter. So let me explain. If he's just going to walk forward, he's going to walk forward into a person who doesn't walk back. And when he does walk back, he's going to, when Cory Sandhagen continues to walk forward, he's going to walk into the clinch, which just isn't where you want to be against Petr Yan.
Okay. I'll give you that.
Right?
Yes.
So you're going to have to fight moving backwards. And that's a lot harder when you're used to fighting moving forwards, right? So
that's what's fascinating to me. I think, like when I say fascinating, it's more like I'm super interested to see what Cory Sandhagen does differently and what his team has come up against, because basically he's fighting a fighter that can do serious damage to somebody with the kind of abilities or the way that Cory Sandhagen fights. Like Harry said, a guy who's moving forward into Petr Yan is going to be a fighter that's going to be seriously hurt at the end of the fight, in my opinion, as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that what Harry said as well was absolutely perfect in what Cory Sandhagen needs to do, which he didn't show against TJ Dillashaw. And that was, and we see this time and time again with champions and with elite fighters. The ability to be able to switch up your game plan mid-fight, or to notice that something isn't working yourself mid-fight and make that switch is detrimental in a title fight. You've got to be able to do that if you're a champion, and you've got to be able to do it sometimes more than once in a fight as well. Now, what Petr Yan has in his back pocket is the ability to do that. We've seen him change it up time and time again. And luckily for Petr Yan, what he has as well coming into this fight is that if it's not going his way on the feet, he will have that clinch in his back pocket. He will have those trips in his back pocket, and he will have those takedowns in his back pocket. And that is a thing that will keep Cory Sandhagen guessing time and time again, and it might affect his game a little bit. So I'm really looking forward to this one too, but more so really to see Petr Yan in action. Like I'm going to sing the same tune as Harry here. I'm a massive fan of Petr Yan, or Petr Yan.
Petr Yan, absolutely right. I'm going to give my pick, unless Robbie, if you've got any final closing thoughts.
Okay. Final closing thoughts are, it was probably too broad of me to say that Cory Sandhagen is better on the feet. What I would maintain is that if they are at range, it gives a substantial advantage to Cory Sandhagen. So perhaps keeping it at range is ideal. I think the fight is probably going to be decided about whether he does come crashing into the clinch is probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, because like to your point, right? If Cory comes out and makes Petr Yan come to him, we've got an extremely interesting fight on our hands.
Yes.
Yeah. Because Petr Yan has to deal with the range. He has to deal with the knowledge that a flying knee could obliterate him at any moment. He has to know that takedowns aren't as available. And if Petr Yan comes crashing into the clinch, well, that gives Cory Sandhagen way more time. Yeah. So, yeah, I think if Cory Sandhagen can fight going backwards and fight circling laterally, we have an extremely interesting fight on our hands. Because as you say, like, he's not a slouch on the feet at all, right? But it's more prevalent now. I think that, fighters changing their styles, but generally fighters don't change the way they fight, right? Especially when they can make switches in fight, but they don't really change who they are.
Yeah, and when I say switches, I mean, it's like you don't see a striker suddenly turn into a wrestler, but it's like those little intricacies that you can do in fights that you can kind of maybe feint in this for this shot or counter strike on when you notice this shot. But like I think it has to be said that we shouldn't diminish Cory Sandhagen's skills on the feet. I think he's a phenomenal fighter overall. And yeah, he has a good chance of winning this, but I think overall, I don't know, it's going to be difficult for him. Harry?
Yeah, so my pick is Petr Yan decision. I think Cory Sandhagen is tough as fuck. And I think if it gets to a firefight, you don't want to be there against Yan, but Cory Sandhagen will fight fire with fire. And I mean, maybe that means he's probably going to get knocked out, but I do think it's a Petr Yan decision. Robbie, what do you think?
I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to get swayed by you guys too much, but what I would say is it's obviously going to be dependent on whether Cory Sandhagen can make those adjustments. But what I do think is that they're quite obvious adjustments that need to be made from Cory Sandhagen's part and to counter Petr Yan. I would like to think that his camp is going to point out these changes that need to be made and he's going to be able to adjust for them, because it's not like, I know it is going to be a bit to be circling off the cage and keeping the fight at range, but it's not such substantial changes that can't be made and can't develop those specific skills over a fight camp, especially for a guy like Cory Sandhagen, who does seem very switched on.
That's one thing. He's very cerebral and very intelligent, or so it seems, right, from listening to interviews and stuff. So if there's somebody that's going to be able to be ultra critical of his own game and aid in the game plan, it might well be Cory Sandhagen, right? Ian, give us a pick, please.
I'm looking at these two fighters, and I'm looking at Petr Yan, who fought against Sterling last March. Obviously, you need him with an illegal knee, and it cost him his title. So he's going to be coming into this fight probably with underlying frustrations. He's going to be well rested. I think he's going to be looking to make a statement that he is the guy to beat at 135 pounds. He's coming in against a guy who only fought a really hard fight 3 months ago against TJ Dillashaw.
That's a huge
and
point.
I think that, the damage he's taken in that fight, accumulated with the damage that he's probably taken in the build up to this fight, is probably going to equal a Petr Yan finishing him either round 4 or round 5 in this fight. Because I do agree with you guys, Cory Sandhagen is as tough as they come, but there is only so much that you can take, and it's so important. It's so important to give yourself a break in between fights, and unfortunately, the circumstances haven't given Cory Sandhagen that chance to get that break. So, I mean, I can only see one thing in this fight. I can see maybe a cagey first round, a cagey second round, and then maybe Petr Yan coming into it in the later stages, turning up the heat like he did against Aljamain Sterling and getting the finish late in this fight.
Fair play. We'll move on to Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. I'm just going to wax lyrical about Dan Hooker for about 15 minutes. So just leave me be and, come back. This motherfucker is different breed. You know what I mean? He's a different fucking breed. To get to the fight against Nasrat, to perform the way he did, and to be fair, both of them had absolutely terrible circumstances to get to that fight. Terrible, terrible circumstances. And fair play to them both for turning up, making weight and fighting. But that was a fight that was never in doubt in my mind. That is an awful stars matchup for somebody like Nasrat Haqparast. And I think Dan Hooker showed why. Islam Makhachev, on the other hand, is probably the next champion at 155, right? The next long-range champion at 155, in my opinion. Now, if we look through Dan Hooker's losses, or Dan Hooker's fights, right? I don't see many grapplers. I don't see many lads with the pedigree of grappling that Islam Makhachev has. Obviously, Islam is more of a proficient striker than, some of his teammates. However, I'm looking through and I'm like, the closest thing to a grappler here is Jim Miller. Not much of a grappler. Gilbert Burns, again, he's a grappler, but he's not in MMA.
He's not a wrestler.
Yeah, he's not in MMA either. He's very, he's a jiu-jitsu player in MMA. You know what I mean? I feel like this is a tough fight for Dan Hooker. A tough fight. What we could see is Hooker keep the range, land knees when Islam comes in, land straight shots, keep him at bay, whatever. But I don't think the range is going to play as much of a point as we think it's going to. He mentioned in a pre-fight interview that he's not worried about getting subbed. He's not worried about getting ground and pounded because Islam doesn't really do that. Sure. But he will hold you down and tire you out for 3 rounds or 2.5 rounds and then turn up the pace, right? I feel as though this is a perfect stars matchup, really, for Islam Makhachev. An even more perfect stars matchup would have been RDA, right? Because RDA just fucking despises wrestlers, but chooses to fight them all of the time. But if you're Islam, you take Dan, you put on a show, and you're talking top 5. You're talking top 10, right? So I give Dan Hooker all the props in the world. I love his footwork. I love the L steps. I love the stance switches. I love the check left hooks. I love the knees up the middle. But I just don't think it's going to be enough. Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, is the absolute fucking truth at 155. And I think it's going to be a really, really tough fucker to stop him. The other thing I will say is look at the fights that Dan Hooker has been in. The Edson Barbosa fight, the Dustin Poirier fight. I have never seen somebody look so out of place than in that Michael Chandler fight. And then he comes back, okay, looks fantastic against Haqparast. But I have to question, what's his chin like? What's his cardio like, right? He's a well-drilled athlete, etc., but the damage takes its toll. And how many rounds has he done with Izzy Adesanya, where he's taken a few licks? How many times has he had rounds with Brad Riddell? How many times has he done rounds with all these absolute monsters? Islam Makhachev is not the same. And I feel as though we're looking at the striking disparity, the skill disparity on the feet is nowhere near as wide as the skill disparity in the grappling, right? Nowhere near. So what's going to happen? Probably 3 rounds of grappling.
You done?
Yeah. I didn't. Go ahead, Robbie.
I was going to say, what I do like, I think Dan Hooker did actually put it quite well. I know the interview you're talking about. I did listen to that. And he did make very good points in that Islam Makhachev is not a terrifying ground and pounder. He's not Khamzat. Yep, sorry about that. Khamzat, please don't hurt me. He's not like a slick submission guy, but it is the Khabib game plan 101. Get you absolutely exhausted, because actually that's what Khabib's game is more about. It's more about exhausting you than it is about ground and pounding you into a finish. Get you absolutely exhausted and then look to finish towards the latter part of the fight. And Islam's taken that brilliantly. He's run with it in his own way. It's a bit different. And his striking is probably better than, or more fundamentally sound than Khabib's.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think Dan Hooker's one path is going to be those knees, just because there is either going to Dan Hooker's best chance is to threaten Islam so much of those knees that it causes him to hesitate on the grappling, or that he manages to score a knockout or something. I don't see any other way that Dan Hooker takes it.
Can I just chime in there a second, just before I throw it over to Ian? Makhachev isn't a shoot from far out, going to get caught by a knee. He's a clinch, now I'm taking you down.
Body lock kind of a guy.
Absolutely. He's going to get to a range where he knows there's no knees and elbows, bro. We're grappling now, and you're fucked. Like the closest, the guy that I thought was going to give Makhachev the best test, and did, was Arman Tsarukyan, right? Fantastic grappler in his own right, but it could also strike. What happened? Makhachev controlled all of the scrambles.
That looks like even better win right now than it did at the time, because Tsarukyan is another guy who's going to be on the up and up in the next couple of years in the lightweight division.
They'll fight for a title within 3 years, for 5 years,
that's
for sure.
That's a fair call, yeah.
And you look at Hooker, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure he's a proficient grappler, but it's not the same level, right? It's just not. When we looked at Benny Dariush versus, was it Diego Ferreira? Most recently, what was Benny Dariush's last fight? It was Diego Ferreira, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So the main thing that won that fight was scramble control, right? Both good grapplers, but Benny Dariush was just one step ahead in the scramble. Every time Dan Hooker chooses to scramble, I can almost guarantee that Islam will be in control of it. That loses fights, right? And you're right, Robbie, that the style is about domination. It's not about your turn, my turn, let's stand up and let's see who wins. No. It's always my turn. And you just get up because the round ends. Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as what you guys are thinking. Like, I mean, Makhachev is a puzzle that hasn't really been figured out yet. He has one defeat against Martins like early on in his career, but after that, I mean, no one has even come close to beating him. I mean, Robbie said that, Hooker's going to have to find a way to make Makhachev not want to shoot. And I don't know. I honestly, that's the things that I like to think about when it comes to fighting. And when you're talking about a certain set of skills with one guy and another, is what can you do? Or if I was Dan Hooker, what would I do? And I mean, it just boils down to the fact that it's just a horrible matchup. And that's why Makhachev is taking this fight, because he's like, yep, I'm going to go in against a guy who I know I can take down whenever I want. What Makhachev is going to have in his back pocket is, and I'm interested to see with him, because it'll tell a tale on what kind of a fighter Makhachev is that how confident is he in his striking? Because he knows he has his, he knows he has his grappling in his back pocket, but how confident is he to stand and bang with a striker like Dan Hooker? You know what I mean? We talked about Jan, and we've seen other fighters at times prove themselves. Johnny Bones Jones beating guys at their own game. So, I mean, Makhachev knows he can go in there, and I think a lot of other people, and maybe even Dan Hooker, knows deep down that Makhachev is going to be able to go in there and take him down as much as he wants. But Makhachev as a fighter, does he want to prove himself? Does he want to say that he's like, how do you do that? You go in there and you do strike with a guy like Dan Hooker. Now, I'm not saying you go in there and strike with him for 15 minutes, but you definitely go in there and test the water. You show him a few things and see how you respond. You know, maybe get in a couple of striking exchanges. Well, the only thing is that if Dan Hooker lands clean once, it's all over. That's it. You're going to be stuck in a grappling fight for the rest of the fight because, you know, you took that chance, you got hit. All right, fair enough. So that's what I'm more interested in. I mean, the intricacies of breaking this fight down is pretty simple, to be honest. I mean, it's a really, really prominent grappler against a really, really prominent striker. And the discrepancy between the striking, like, well, I can't remember who said it, whether it was Harry or Robbie, the difference between the striking and the grappling. I mean, Harry said that the grappling is there's a massive gap in the grappling in comparison to the striking. Like I've seen Makhachev on the feet and he can hold his own on the feet. So it's all down to how confident Makhachev is in his ability to stand and bang here. And that's what I'm interested to see in this fight.
I just think the Khabib camp, the performances, the wins, the plaudits, the applauds, the love they get doesn't come from taking risks. It comes from winning every single fight. It comes from proving that their way is the right way, quote unquote. Right.
And Khabib has famously said, to piggyback on that as well, is that the problem with most wrestlers, and he quoted this, he said, the problem with most wrestlers is that they want to become strikers. So they will forget their wrestling. And my opinion is, I know what I'm good at. I know I'm a good wrestler. I don't want to be a good striker. I know what I'm good at and I'm going to use that. So if he's using that kind of mentality himself, he's going to be passing it down to his guys as well.
And the blueprint, the Khabib blueprint, we take Ankalaev. I'm going to hold him down and exhaust this motherfucker for 4 rounds. And then what you're going to see is me go out in the 5th round and try and be Mike Tyson. Right? Because he knows the fight's won. And he also knows, as you said, if Ankalaev catches him a few too many times and he doesn't like it, he just runs into the cage and takes him down again. Right? So I think Arman, sorry, you can special referee. Let's get him in there. Let's
out, Arman. He has the money in the bank. He'll come in and challenge either one, whoever wins.
Absolutely. I think if you're Islam, you do plan A for 2 rounds and you see how it's going. If you see Dan Hooker over there, hands on knees, blowing out of his ass, strike with him. Why not? Because that's what then people will talk about. Right? But if you're Dan Hooker
here, do you just use any opportunity that you have on the feet just to go fucking berserk and just try and offload anything that you can?
So my thoughts are, you've got a round. Right? You either need to really hurt him or you need to put him away. And there are a couple of things, right? Dan's known as the hangman. Why? He's got a fantastic guillotine. Cool. Is it there? Maybe. Don't know. It's always possible. Dustin Poirier jumped the gilly and it was fucking close. Like, you don't see Khabib bail like that for nothing, you know? So, you know, is it there? Maybe. To me, the big weapons for Dan Hooker are Islam gets a body lock, McGregor elbows. That's the first thing you have to be looking at, right? McGregor elbows, as many and as often as you can. And then, you have to be looking for, if he pushes you anywhere near the fence, Anthony Pettis the shit out of that. Blast your way off that fence into something. Flying knees, Superman punches, anything. You name it, throw it at him. And
also what Dan Hooker also has to be, and what will be very important in this fight, is how active he will be off his back, because we're going to fucking see him on his back in this fight. There's no doubt about it. So if he has the ability to control Makhachev and land maybe nasty elbows on the bottom, you know, we've seen some fighters get awarded, and it's rewarded on damage too. So if Makhachev is on top and he is not landing any strikes, and Dan Hooker is on the bottom and he is landing strikes, then you're scoring that fight for Dan Hooker. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has in that repertoire as well.
Absolutely. All right, Robbie, any final thoughts?
We can go to picks.
All right, mate. Give me a pick.
I mean, this is probably not going to surprise anyone, but I'm going to go with Islam. I think a very late finish, very late submission is likely.
Ian?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Robbie a little bit, but I'd probably steer towards a Makhachev decision.
I'm going Dan Hooker, round 1, 30-second flying knee. Let's fucking go. No, I mean, look, genuinely, I would love to see Dan Hooker win this, purely for how wholesome it would be for the work that man and that sacrifice that man has put in to this, right? He's not going to see his family until maybe January, when they can fly his family over and get them out of Australia or New Zealand, right? The dedication that he's made and the dedication that he's put in to this game to pick up a fight like Makhachev is unmatched, right? However, it's going to be a Makhachev late submission, I think. Because look, the blueprint is there. He does it to everyone. He wears you down, and you'll give him something. And when you give him something, you're fucked. Whether your name is Thiago Moises, whether your name is Drew Dober, whether your name is Cajun Johnson, right? Something comes. Can I see Dan Hooker surviving a decision? Yes, absolutely, I can. But I think the thing that really gets Islam up the ranks is finishes. So if he knows that Hooker is tired, if he knows there's nothing for him on the ground, I think he'll try and push the pace and get a finish. But either way, Makhachev.
Does that take us on nicely to the exciting heavyweight fight?
Yeah, let's run through this quickly. Fucking hell.
But guys, we all love heavyweight fights in the UFC, and they're always great, and the talent pool is huge. So, but anyway, Marcin Tybura, I'm not good at these pronunciations, is a really ugly striker in comparison to Alexander Volkov. But you know what? As much as his fundamentals are lacking, as much as he could take entire seconds off his punches by neatening them up, fundamentals are clearly not everything, because he's done very well for himself. He is an awkward striker. He does actually do a few very clever things. He hooks off the jab very nicely. He flows his high kicks in very well. They all look horrible, but they're all really quite effective, actually. And actually, in his last 3 or 4 fights, he's really lent on his grappling quite heavily, and it's gone very well for him. Again, the takedowns look horrible, but he's won. He's won those 3. I'm not sure how much of a run he's on, but 5. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. Yeah, it's going very well for him. Volkov is a much crisper striker. He's also he's a lot taller, probably, or at least got much bigger reach. Oh, no, maybe not. Only 2 inches. No.
Volkov is 6'7". Tybura is 6'3".
Yeah, there we go. Yes, he is significantly
taller. Yeah.
A lot crisper striking. He has struggled in the past when people have focused on takedowns. That is one thing that I did revise a few of those fights, and DC really made a point of it. And he's right, but DC talks about it every fight for some reason, about how Alexander Volkov seems to struggle when people are mixing takedowns into the mix. But Marcin Tybura has really struggled every time he's got put on the back foot. He does not like pressure. He loves being on the front foot. He gets those takedowns off of cage work, and when you put him on the back foot, he just really seems to crumble under pressure. And Alexander Volkov is one guy who's probably going to be bringing that pressure.
I mean, I'm going to try and sum this fight up in one sentence. Volkov's going to batter your man for 2 minutes and 40 seconds and then lose in the last 20.
Harry, I worked really hard on that.
That's what's going to happen. I'm telling you.
No, I think Robbie has some excellent points there, and
thank you, Ian.
Yeah, no, and with Tybura, it's like he's a guy who likes to be the hammer, but he doesn't like to be the nail. So, I mean, Volkov is an extremely difficult fighter to fight with his height and range, and I think this is a good matchup for Volkov. A guy like him, I think he's going to fight his fight like he always does at range, pick fighters off. He is solid enough takedown defense. I wouldn't be worried about him getting his back up against the wall in this fight. I think that this is a fight that is all for Alexander Volkov to lose. Tybura has been on a good run. He's on a 5-fight win streak, but just going back to the level of competition again, the level of competition that he has been fighting in comparison to Volkov, who is coming off a defeat against Cyril Gane. But, you know, Gane is a serious fighter in his own right. So, I mean, I think this is Volkov's fight to lose for sure.
I don't care about this fight anymore. Let's just move to picks. Robbie?
I mean, you've got to give it to Volkov, haven't you? The matchups just work perfectly for him. I think Volkov, maybe not a first round, probably a second round knockout, a second round finish via strikes. You know what I will say for these two, though? One more good thing to say about them. They've both got very good gas tanks for heavyweights. At least this fight won't just peter out into nothing by the end of the third round, which a lot of heavyweight fights do. These two guys will bring it for the whole thing.
My pick is Volkov decision. Ian?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be a Volkov decision overall. I think that Tybura is going to kind of probably come out, and I think that he's going to set a pace that Tybura is not going to be able to keep. Volkov will, and I think that was going to result in Tybura slowing down, being much easier to hit. And it is a little likely that we might see a finish towards the end of round 3, but I'm going to go for Volkov by decision.
Grand. Let's move on to a fight that almost certainly doesn't go 3 rounds. Ian, do you want to talk us through Jingliang versus Khamzat Chimaev?
Yeah, so it's the return of Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, it's been an interesting story. He was the talking point of 2020 with his quick wins and his quick turnarounds, and then he got COVID, and then he retired, and now seemingly he has a gun to his head if he doesn't compete again. So the question is what Khamzat Chimaev we're going to see when we come in here. We know what Jingliang is going to bring. He's a cardio machine that carries big power. He was more dangerous in the earlier rounds than he is in the later rounds, but he's a guy who's always going to be there, and he will be always in front of you. So it'll be up to really watch Chimaev. If we're talking about the Chimaev of old, I think he comes in and he probably wipes the floor with a guy like Jingliang. I'm probably going to call Jingliang different names throughout this breakdown, but no offense, my guy. No offense. Lee, yeah. So I think that Chimaev, if he comes back with what skills he has basically, and the same fighter as he was when he left, he's going to wipe the floor with Lee. But I heard that he had COVID pretty bad. I heard that he was on a ventilator for a period of time as well.
He was coughing up blood at one point.
Yeah, I heard that it was pretty serious, and that every time he started going back and training, that he was coughing up blood and he wasn't doing too good at all. So what's the best way to say it? His friend over there in I don't know, Kadyrov is kind of made the decision for him. He kind of took him out of retirement for some reason. So it'll be interesting to see if Khamzat Chimaev is fit and healthy to go in there and compete, if he wants to be in there to compete. And we'll probably have the answer to a lot of those questions inside around 2 or 3 minutes in the first fight, and we'll see what we're dealing with. You know, I think that, if we do see the Chimaev of old, I think there's probably too many questions to really guarantee anything right now. But if we do see the Chimaev of old, I think there's going to be a pretty straightforward fight for him.
Yeah. I'll just give some quick points if you don't mind, Robbie. It's a terrible stars matchup for Li Jingliang. Your man's got massive power and he can also grapple. Last 2 fellas that have beaten Li Jingliang are Neil Magny, who mixes grappling with striking really well, and Jake Matthews, who can do the same. It's not a great styles matchup. I think for Li Jingliang, its best way to win is if Khamzat just comes in and just wants to stand in the middle of the cage and bang with him. If that's the case, Lee's got massive power. He could knock him out. But I see this as I can only speak about fighter A versus fighter B, right? Because we literally don't know what Khamzat's going to come in. So I can only really analyze this based on his last performance. And if that's the case, this doesn't get out of round 1. And Li Jingliang is staring up at the lights for sure. Robbie?
I don't think there's much to add, and I'm not going to feel bad about. Well, honestly, I think that factoring in the whole COVID bit, it's actually very hard to make a pick because that is such a question mark over his health. But as you very well put, we can only base it on what we know rather than speculation about how bad the COVID still is. I mean, I don't really have any more to add than what you guys have said.
Pick then, Robbie.
Khamzat, we're going to assume that he's coming in not absolutely broken. We'll see what Chechnya has given him.
Yeah, maybe some of that Mexican beef, but I'm going
that Chechen beef in the tacos. The Chechen tacos are seemingly all the go now.
I'm saying
they don't even eat the vegan one.
Yeah, a vegan one. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Chimaev inside round one. Easy. Head kick knockout, I reckon. Ian?
Woo. I think that's going to be a first round submission for Chimaev. I'm going to base that off his last performance. I'm curious to see what guy it is. I was really excited on him. Based off his last performance, I was, he was supposed to be going in there against Leon Edwards. It's a massive jump down and step from a guy like Leon Edwards, and that I think that is a good thing. And I'm glad the UFC didn't throw him in there to the Wolves straight away. This is a good test for him to see where he's at as a fighter, see where he's at after his sickness. Hopefully he's back to full health. Hopefully he goes back to smishing guys, as he says. And I'm excited to see that fight overall. Chimaev first round submission.
Fantastic. Can we see Neil Magny after he wipes the floor with Jingliang? Because I think that's actually a good matchup. Neil Magny versus Khamzat. I like that.
I don't know if Neil Magny is capable of being in a good matchup. He always kind of wins boring fights.
But that's the thing for me, right? Like, let's see what Khamzat can do against a guy who can nullify you like Neil Magny can.
Well, you want to put him in against the spoiler?
Yeah, 100%. Let's see what he does. If he absolutely smashes Neil Magny to bits, all right, let's go to the races. Fuck it, let's see it. Robbie, you've given a pick, haven't you?
Yes.
All right, good. I mean, this is how much this is a one-sided fight for me. Ian, we'll stay with you. This is actually a fucking fun fight. Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Oezdemir. Talk to me.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fun fight. Volkan Oezdemir is always in fun fights, and he carries big power. Not had the best run of luck in his last fight. He got knocked out by Yuri Prochazka, but they sure do. And I think that he probably got knocked out by a future light heavyweight champion, in my opinion, as well. But, Oezdemir, the fight before that, beat Rakic, who was a great fighter, also knocked out Ilir Latifi. So, he can get it done. He's coming in here against Ankalaev, who is 15-1. He's had a great UFC run since he came in. His only defeat of his career was that famous triangle choke loss to Paul Craig, where he was beating Paul Craig for the majority of the fight, but got caught in a triangle with 1 second to go. So, I mean, he's bounced back from that. He's put up a serious run. He's won 6 fights in a row now. Picked up a nice decision win against Nikita Krylov in his last fight. And I think that, this is going to be a really exciting stand-up war. And I'm interested to see how it goes down. I can't see this fight going 3 rounds at all. I think that similar enough to a couple of fights that we've talked about already, that this will be a fun matchup until maybe Oezdemir hurts Ankalaev, and then we might see some grappling initiated in this fight. But it's going to be a good stand and bang fight overall, and it might be an under the radar fight of the night.
Robbie?
I think this is the fight that I'm least confident about picking out of just about any of them, to be quite honest. I just don't know. It's going to be good striking. It's going to be, if it does go to grappling, you've got to give the advantage to Magomed, right?
In a massive way.
Way. I kind of, my feeling is that I don't know who I would pick if they're just going to bang it out in the cage, but it's kind of like what we were saying earlier about the difference in striking and the difference in grappling. Even if Volkan is the better striker, the difference in grappling is so much bigger between these two than the difference in striking. I'm pulling an Ian and sort of swaying towards giving my picks early, but I'm swaying heavily towards Magomed.
I agree. I think that Volkan Oezdemir, like let me just break this down. It might be a bit far-fetched, but go with me and we'll round it out. Volkan Oezdemir is known for having massive power, right? Especially early, and unorthodox striking, bundles forward, it just throws his shit. And if it lands, you're probably looking up at the lights. Well, we've got Ion Cutelaba, who is more than happy to do that kind of thing. And he got whacked twice, right? You've then got a fantastic performance, in my opinion, against Nikita Krylov, who's the first guy that's like top tier that he's really faced, right? Krylov was a fucking serious prospect and then, fell off a bit, whatever. I'm just not sure what Volkan has to offer here. Magomed, one of the things that really impresses me about Magomed is his fight IQ. It's his shot selection, right? It's where he is in the cage, with his feet, with his hands, with his head, with his chin. Volkan seems to me as a man that, as a bit of the Tony Ferguson about him, doesn't really know what he's going to do until he gets in there and just does it. And I feel as though, as I've said previously in this podcast and fucking many times on the podcast before, I will always pick the fighter who I believe is more technically well-rounded. And that to me is Magomed Ankalaev by a long, long way. I think this is a tough matchup for Volkan, to be honest. I really do. I think it's a tough matchup. Robbie's already given his pick. We'll move to my picks. And I think Magomed Ankalaev finishes him inside 2 rounds. Ian?
Yeah, that was an excellent breakdown, Harry. I agree with most of what you said there. I think that if this fight is like a stand and bang, it really is a toss up. And I think if you're smart and if you want Ankalaev to be smart, he's not going to engage all that much. If I'm Ankalaev, if I'm his coaching team, what I'm telling him to do with a guy like Volkan Oezdemir is I'm going to tell him to grapple early on here, and I'm going to get him to get that blood rushing into Volkan Ozdemir's arms, get his arms heavy, make him lose a little bit of pop out of his punches. Once that's done, once he feels that his arm, like your fighters will be able to feel that strength and stuff like that. You'll be able to tell off people's stance, how heavy guys' arms are. Those are the important reads that you need to make in a fight. I think that's what Ankalaev should do here. He should initiate some grappling early days, kind of get the blood racing into Ozdemir's arms, then stand and bang with him. And I think if he does that, he would probably get him out over there towards the end of round 2 or round 3. But my official pick would be Ankalaev by knockout in round 3.
I love that. I think that's absolutely bang on the money. Right, we'll move on to a pretty up and down fight, to be honest, which is Amanda Ribas versus Virna Jandiroba. Against Mackenzie Dern, Jandiroba looked like a striker, but isn't. Fantastic grappler, serious pressure, serious knee cuts, serious top half guard game, and actually has applicable takedowns for MMA, which is a really, really strange thing for like world level black belt jiu-jitsu players, right? Amanda Ribas, on the other hand, is absolutely a striker, right? Has some submissions on the ground, is no slouch on the ground, but we're definitely not talking Virna Jandiroba level. I really enjoy, and I know Robbie will hate this, but I really enjoy both of these fighters. This really is a question of, can Amanda Ribas keep it standing? If she can, she probably wins a decision. If she doesn't, she may well get finished. There's really not much more to it than that, to be honest. Ian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much the same as what you are. I think both fighters are fantastic in their own right. UFC are putting a lot of money and putting a lot of time to try and push Amanda Ribas.
Yes.
I would hope. I think this is a good fight for her. It's a good testing pot for her. It's a winnable fight for her. But as Harry said, it all boils down to what state her grappling is in, and does she have the ability to sprawl and brawl in this fight, because that's her route to victory here. Yeah. I do think that she does have the skills to do that here, but fights play out in different ways. People get tired, shit happens in fights. This is a very close fight. It's a real toss up on who might win, and I think it's going to be an interesting contest between two really good up and comers in the division.
I agree. I don't care as much about Zubaira Tukhugov versus Ricardo Ramos, so I'm going to skip that. We're going to move on to, as I'm reading the card now down from Topology, I'll just name some of the fights before we get to the last fight that we'll break down. Albert Duraev is fighting Roman Kopylov. Kopylov is supposed to be a good prospect, so we'll see what he's about. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos is fighting Benoit Saint-Denis. Michael Oleolanchuk is back from not taking steroids anymore, and he's fighting Shamil Gamzatov.
Hang on. How do you say Mikhail's surname?
Oleolanchuk.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic pronunciation. Absolutely would be.
So we'll move on to Makwan Amirkhani versus Lerone Murphy. And that is a really interesting European fight, I think. And thankfully, a nicer step back in competition for Lerone Murphy. Stepped in on really short notice to fight fucking Zubaira Tukhugov, right? Then was chucked in against Ricardo Ramos. Was supposed to fight Charles Jourdain. I think Lerone Murphy is a very dark horse in this division. I really, really like what I see from him. He's on the older side, right? 30, but by no means, down and out or whatever, or on a timer at all. But he can grapple. And for an English guy, that's unheard of, really. He can strike. His fight IQ is really good. And the one thing that impressed me the most out of all of his performances was when he hit the mat with Zubair, the first thing he didn't do is panic. He was measured. He knew how to get up. Okay, he wasn't able to get up a lot of the time, but he did know how to and always stuck to the right things and made the right decisions at the right times. And that, to me, is one of the most impressive things. Okay, he fought to a draw. It was on 2 weeks' notice or something fucking crazy like that, right? And since then, he's gone in, earned 2 wins. The Makwan Amirkhani bout, I mean, what can I say about Makwan Amirkhani? Your man was full of prospect, full of excitement, full of talent, but just seemingly doesn't use it, right? Or at least he uses it in round 1, and then there's nothing left for the rest of the round, right? Like you saw him against Shane Burgos, fantastic first round, and was literally blowing out of his arse from then, right? And Shane Burgos turned up the mean factor to 11 and just punished him. Really, really punished him. To me, we're going to see a similar thing. Lerone Murphy has to keep it standing as much as possible in round 1. Probably won't. Will probably get thrown about the place. But then in round 2 and round 3, he just turns up the gas and finishes him. I think that's how this goes. I really do think this is how this goes. I don't see what Makwan Amirkhani has done in the last 5 years to improve his game. And look, I'm no coach, I'm no corner man, but when your coach is in your corner and is pulling things of such emotional depth as family and country pride out, and you do nothing, I mean, what do you want me to say? But yeah, let's see. I might be wrong. But I think you're pretty spot on there. Like, I mean, if I was to give a breakdown of the fight, I probably would say almost exactly the same thing as you as well. I think that Lerone Murphy is one of the best hidden gems in UK MMA right now. And I'm really excited to see him going in there and competing this weekend. But I'll admit, he wasn't on my radar all that much until his UFC run. But by Jesus, he is on my radar right now. He's a phenomenal fucking fighter. And I'm really excited to see him go in there and fight. I think that he is going to go in there and probably perform in first, second gear in round 2, and then go up to third and fourth in the second round, and then maybe fourth or fifth gear in the third round. That was really hard to say. That was a bad analogy.
Yeah,
there was too many.
That could have been a little bit more succinct right there.
Yeah, that was a bad analogy. But he's going to turn up the gears as the rounds go on here, and I think he'll get Makwan Amirkhani out of there in late round 2 or 3 as well.
I agree. Just before I chuck you over, Robbie, can I just touch on?
Please don't.
The first 2 amateur fights for Lerone Murphy. You know who they were? James Doolan, solid fighter. Matthew fucking Bonner, second amateur fight. Wins both of them. He's been through, like what I'm saying, he's been through the ringer since day one, right? Never took an easy fight. But yeah, sorry, Robbie. Go.
I just before we give Robbie in, I just want to give Makwan Amirkhani a shout out for having the best picture on Tapology.
1
the
million
absolute
%.
best. Pound for pound, best picture on Tapology. Makwan Amirkhani. Go check it out.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Robbie.
I don't.
You don't know who he is, do you?
I don't know who either of them are. Guys, you should fucking know this by now that I just don't know who anyone is. I love the sport. I love MMA, but I just don't know the people. And
just make sure that you tune in and watch.
I will.
Murphy on
you
the
guys
undercard
have
on this side.
You guys have hyped me up for it, and I do really want some British fighters that I can get behind. Because there aren't that many, and if this guy is as good as if he is all that, I'm keen for it.
I really and truly think that he is, but like Harry said, his age is a difficult thing now. So he doesn't have that much time to kind of build it the way he wants. So what's likely going to happen here is that he's probably going to get the win over Amirkhani in this fight, and he's going to be probably fighting top 12 guy next. If he wins that, it'll be a top 8 guy. So, I mean, what we're going to see with Leon Murphy in the next 2 years is a rapid progress up through the rankings. And sometimes that can help a fighter, sometimes that can hinder a fighter. I mean, what Leon Murphy needs now is constant action, because he hasn't been getting that. So he's been picking up these heads of steams in fights. He's been performing really well, but he hasn't been able to do it on a constant basis. And that's what he needs more so than anything else in his career right now. And those factors are out of his control with the pandemic and everything. But I really hope that we see him compete here, and we get to see him compete multiple times next year as well.
I agree. And I'll say this. The only person I think coming out of British MMA that is a bigger prospect than Lerone Murphy is Jack Shaw. And Jack Shaw for me is possibly championship material. Possibly. That boy has everything you need other than a decent physique. But mate, if you're fucking chucking fellas about the place like he does, you don't need one. Anyway, that's the last fight we'll break down. We'll just touch on Yazong Hu is fighting Andre Petrosky. Damir Ismagulov is fighting Magomed Mustafayev. Jesus. And then Tagir Ulanbekov is fighting Alan Nascimento. As always, fight of the night picks, Robbie.
Oh, fight of the night picks. I think fight of the night's going to go with Jan and Sandhagen. Okay. I'm interested to see how that one goes. Okay. If you're going to say performance of the night, it's going to be Islam Makhachev.
Oh, okay. Ian?
Yeah, I agree with Robbie. I can see the fight of the night going to Peter Yan or Sandhagen, or it can either go to Big Yan or Glover Teixeira too. I think those are two
close second,
potentially exciting fights. And I would expect. Look, I'll go with Yan and Sandhagen for my pick as fight of the night as well.
So I'm going to go left field and go Ankalaev Oezdemir. I think Oezdemir will absolutely bring the pace in round one, and Ankalaev will answer in a nice enough way, right? It will make it exciting, and then round two, Ankalaev will turn the pressure up. And I mean that's my pick. Performance of the night will go to Khamzat Chimaev.
I see your point.
It'll be a one-sided beatdown,
but.
I don't think the UFC they haven't been given out fights of the nights in recent fights. It's just been given performance of the night to the both fighters who they would consider being in it. So I can see. I think if Murphy gets Amirkhani out of there, I can see him getting out. Like he's got vicious power. I can see Amirkhani kind of gassing out a little bit, and if Leon Murphy kind of turns up the pace in round 3 and gets that good knockout, could see him getting the bonus. There's a lot of bonus. There's a lot of
early on in the undercard is going to get a bonus, is it?
Maybe.
Yeah,
he's a serious fighter. I'm telling you, he's a serious fighter.
No, you know what? This is not a comment on their level of skill being low in the undercard.
Yeah, I understand.
This is a comment on the fact that the UFC fucking just never give this so rare for them to give awards to people that early on in the night.
It is very true. You are fighting against the odds there on that, but I mean. There's been a few. They're likely to give maybe one on the undercard, but it all depends. We don't know what we're going to expect. We could see an absolutely nuts main card. So
absolutely. All right, boys. Well, one thing I will say just before I let you go is I actually want to change that. My ranking for UK prospects is Jack Shaw, Jake Hadley, and then Lerone Murphy. But that just tells me how much I think highly of Jake Hadley. Can we call Ian? We can't really call Ian Gary British, can we? That's a shame.
No, you can't. You're not taking him from us. Come on, you've taken enough already.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, he's not living in Ireland anymore, so he's technically British. I know he's in America, but we can claim him. Anyway, it's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy the fights, and take care. Enjoy yourselves.
Cheers, Harry.